Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome everyone to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. This is the episode number 163. We're here in the middle of August in 2021, and so fired up about the unique episode that we have coming your way. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that we're joined not by Megan Hibbard, but we're joined by two special guests today. One of them is a member of the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not team, and one of them is a distant member becoming a closer member of the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not team. So the first one is a team member, Whitney Purcell, and she keeps projects moving forward for I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. And Sarah Piercy from Barrie, Ontario, Canada. Welcome, Whitney and Sarah, to the podcast today. Are you guys fired up?
Yes,
we are.
And we're going to talk about something that's really interesting. You know, some of you who've been tuning into the podcast faithfully over the last couple of years will remember Sarah joining us last year to discuss her 2 different year-long spending fast. We talked about it in episode number 96, if you're looking that up, episode number 96. And Sarah is a wife, a mom of 3 children, young children, a friend and a follower of Jesus. And she spent almost 10 years in ministry. That's how we met, as an executive assistant to the lead pastor, Kerry Newhoff, at Connexus Church, an outstanding church with multiple campuses in Ontario. And she continues to work with Kerry as he's grown his leadership network. And she loves people, good conversations, and challenging herself with life experiments for personal progress and spiritual growth. She writes about her exploration of what makes life rich, meaningful, and worth living from her blog, writtenforthegood.com. We'll have a link to that in show notes. And she lives with her family about an hour north of Toronto. And we've invited her back today because now she has created a 30-day spending challenge that's going to be launching later this month, where she'll coach people how to prepare for and successfully complete their very first month-long spending fast. And that's very exciting. But before we kick off the challenge, we wanted to have Sarah back to share her heart behind the fast and what she's hoping people will experience through it. And so I thought, Sarah, first, what did I miss? What would you like to say as you introduce yourself again and reintroduce yourself to those who've met you before?
Well, thank you, Joe, for having me back. I think you covered a lot of bases. There's nothing I want to add to that. I am really excited to share this 30-day spending challenge that I've been working on because I kind of just created this challenge for myself. And over the last 6 months to a year, I've been really trying to flesh out what was under it and how to make it accessible for other people. And so that's sort of where this is coming from. And I'm really excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. When I first got exposed to this idea of a spending challenge, this refraining from doing something, a lot of our challenges are helping people do something. This is to help them to not do something. And Whitney has been working with you in coordinating this. And for those who haven't met Whitney, Whitney has 2 daughters, lives with her husband in Missouri. And maybe tell them a little bit about what you do here at I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, and why you're excited for this conversation today.
So I have been on the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not team for a little over a year now. Like Joe said, I get to help coordinate with projects, try to make his schedule work and flow day to day, and then also work heavily with our fully funded life membership program.
Yes. And we love our fully funded life members. If you want to learn more about that, you can check it out at fullyfunded.life. And so I thought we would just dive right in, Sarah, and kind of ask some questions. What is a 30-day spending challenge? Kind of explain to us what that is.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, the 30-day spending challenge is a chance to reboot habits, but also reroute your heart, and it can lead to personal growth. I like to say that it will move the needle the right way, right away on your finances, whatever your next financial goal is. But there's actually some heart change that ends up happening underneath when you fast from spending. And I am just really excited to see what change it will lead to in other people's lives because of the change that I've actually got to experience myself.
And I remember the first time I heard you say that you were on a spending fast, it was a decade ago. and it was pre-married Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
It was pre-children Sarah. It was, how old were you when you were embarking on that first challenge?
I was probably 22 or 23.
Yeah. And then you did it again, maybe a decade later. And
yeah, almost. Yeah. It was, well, I was married with kids and a mortgage and all that good stuff when I did it the second time. So I've been through two versions of a spending fast. The second spending fast was actually motivated by the roots that were under the spending, not necessarily the spending itself. So it's been interesting to learn from.
So you didn't go on a 30-day spending fast. These spending fasts were much longer. How long were those fasts?
Both spending fasts were 365 days, so a full year.
That's amazing. And anybody who's listening understands why that got my attention. I am a natural born spender. It's my nature. And I think it's God's humor that he has me helping people live, maybe frugally, excellent stewardship. And I think it's really God's way of kind of keeping me between the ditches financially, so I don't train wreck my life financially. And, it's interesting. Each time that you embarked on your spending challenge, you did that. You had different reasons for each one. So kind of unpack, briefly what those reasons were.
Okay. So my first fast from spending was, it was motivated by seeing my own greed. I had just led a team of students to Guatemala, and we were serving the community. And I just saw my own greed in light of real need, and was just really convicted that I needed to change my perspective. I wanted to smother my own greed and live more generously. So I decided I'm going to stop spending money on myself. I'm not going to buy anything new. And instead, I wanted to give that money. So I would send flowers to friends more often and give gifts more often and take friends for lunch, that kind of thing. And it produced so much change inside me. And then the second time, I noticed that I was spending money sporadically. We were going through a really challenging season as a family. And I share a little bit about that in the 30-day spending challenge. But I was spending money for comfort and security because life was so chaotic. And I was like, whoa. I don't want to look to stuff to make me feel secure and comforted. So I stopped spending in order to reroute where my heart was, looking for, the things that it needed. And I only knew to try that because of what I learned from the first time around. So they were very different motivations, but really life-changing in different ways.
And really, if you think about what you're talking about, there is a season that many Christians observe each year, the season of Lent, where they go through a challenge where they give up something. And this is very important. And in its place, they spend time in prayer and seeking the Lord and trying to reboot something in their life. And in this way, this is very similar to that. And it's really addressing this thing that every heart of every human has to deal with, which is greed, which is this insatiable, not able to be satiated need for more, better, bigger, competitive spirit. And it really is so countercultural to say, I'm going to, on purpose, without, being broke or not being able to pay my bills, I'm going to on purpose say no to myself, to the spending thing. So, what does that feel like? Having done this for a year twice, I'm sure people are listening and they're skeptical. I'm skeptical. I myself am going to go on this spending challenge with you. I purposely have refused to do it. That's what my greedy heart tells me, just because I want to do this with the challenge. But I'm nervous about it because I don't have to do that. It's not like I'm struggling financially but I am confident that the actual reason that I'm kind of, rejecting the idea in my mind and heart is because I know what it might reveal about me. So kind of, tell us what you feel like you've experienced and what you hope people will experience by being a part of the spending challenge that's going to be launching here really soon.
Oh, well, I'm so excited for you. I want to ask you 100 questions, but I'll answer your question. The first spending fast that I did was really difficult for the first 3 months. So it was a year long. This 30-day spending challenge is going to be, it's going to be fast and it's very doable, but it's going to feel challenging. But it should. It's called a challenge for a reason. But when I went through my first spending fast, it was so hard just to stop habits. Like I just felt like I was bumping up against the guardrail so many times. But after a few months, it got easier and easier and easier until the point where I was at the end of the spending fast and I went to a mall with a friend and we got, frozen yogurt and we're eating it and I didn't buy a thing and I could have. But my habits were different. My heart was different. I just had a new perspective and a new lifestyle. So sometimes change hurts. Sometimes change is challenging. But there's so much reward on the other side that it is so worth it. But I will say it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. When I travel all these long distances, I drug a boat 63 hours of drive time behind my vehicle during the summer. That was a first for me. And when I'm traveling, I listen to episodes of different shows. I listen to them. I do not watch them. And so I listen to shows that are things that I can comprehend without really wanting to watch them. And I listen to this one show that's very compelling to me called American Greed. And it's on CNBC. And they have it's in a half hour, an hour long show showing how greed has caused people to do really crazy things with money and how they have lied, committed fraud, and that sort of thing. And what I've realized is there are a few exceptions where people just set out to be fraudulent and do very horrible behavior and greed took over. But what I find very compelling is it's almost a study in the fact that most people start with a very excellent idea, an excellent business, an excellent service, and a day comes where they're tempted and they make a poor choice. And that poor choice, they have no idea how far that's going to drag their life into the ditch. Many times, ending up in jail, in a few cases, their own death. In almost all cases, ruined relationships. They've ruined all their relationships. And so you're combating something very powerful here, greed, and this desire for our own self-interest. So were there certain verses or certain statements or sayings that helped you as you went through the spending challenge and that you're hoping people will get as part of this challenge?
I want to say, yes, there were some phrases and statements that really inspired me. And I don't remember exactly who said this one, but it said, if you have more than 2 coats, one of them belongs to the poor. And it might've been Dorothy Day that said that. Anyway, that really convicted my heart because I'm pretty sure I had like 17 coats in my closet. And then Shane Claiborne said the poor exist because we haven't learned to love our neighbor as ourselves. I think it was Shane that said that. And I was like, ooh, okay, that strikes deeper. And then Jesus said, the poor will always be among you. And when he said that, I don't think he was just condoning like a cultural apathy toward the poor. It was, I think maybe it was him acknowledging that on this side of eternity, we are going to do a terrible job at loving one another. And when we have greed, like what would change in our lives if we decided I have enough, I am enough, I do enough? Like what would change in our lives if we thought that? Like the world would look dramatically different. So there was no one phrase or statement that I clung to, but there was just this series of ideas that just started to challenge me and push me towards looking for change. And I will say it's still a growth process, and in different seasons of life, greed shows up in different ways because I don't have enough of something else. So
that's the truth.
Yeah, it's a process and a journey, but one really worth taking.
So Whitney, you've been collaborating really closely with Sarah, kind of taking these experiences and helping move them to a challenge that can help lots of people. What is some stuff that has stood out to you from what Sarah has shared with you, and you feel like people should really consider going on this spending challenge with us?
So it's really interesting that you say that. I remember when I first came on the team and Sarah was on the podcast kind of sharing about her fast, and we were kind of coming out of COVID. My own spending had slowed down for a long time just because when you're not in the stores, you don't spend as much. But then as Sarah started to jump in and create this challenge, it was really inspiring because I felt like at first it felt like this far off concept that there's like no way I could ever do that because like Joe said, I'm a spender too. And the more I heard Sarah talk about her experiences and her fast, I'm like, oh, Sarah's not just this person who doesn't like to spend money and she's just this like unicorn person that happens to exist and she's able to do this. This is a discipline that she learned. And as I watched her go through the process and read all the materials she was creating for the challenge, I was so fired up because I felt conviction for my own heart. And then also just kind of saw how she was going to help other people walk through that journey. So it's been really neat to get to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, I think that's awesome to hear that. And I would just talk to every person listening to the podcast you're watching on YouTube. Your heart may be immediately rejecting this idea of doing a spending challenge. We're humans. It's going to say, absolutely not. I don't know why they're talking about this. I need to turn this off right now. I need to go on some other show. This is garbage. But, I want to just share this with you. I read a story today. It's a real life story of a guy who was living about an hour north of Nome, Alaska. This happened this summer, actually. And he has a shack. He's living totally alone off the grid. And unbeknownst to anyone, he was crossing a small creek river with his ATV with a trailer, and out of the bushes, he was charged by a grizzly bear. It knocked him completely off the four-wheeler, knocked his trailer and everything into the river. He lost his cell phone, his only link to real connection to anyone. He lost everything. And he proceeded to be stalked for the next 14 days by this grizzly trying to get in his house, tearing his house apart, the small shack he had. And one day the clouds came in, a huge layer of clouds. And unbeknownst to him, because of that, a Coast Guard helicopter had to lower its altitude. And because of the clouds, the helicopter got so low, it actually saw this guy's shack with the letters SOS spelled out in rocks on top of it. And they said, there is a guy frantically waving at us with both hands, and that's usually a sign he needs help. And so they actually landed and rescued him. And the person who wrote this said, the lesson here is when the clouds roll in, that may be your very blessing because that's what brought his rescue. And so you may cloud your mind, this idea of ceasing from spending, the spending challenge, but you have no idea the rescue that may be on the way because of it. Rescuing your heart, the bad decision, as I was referencing in those shows, American Greed, that you may be one decision away from making. You have no idea how powerful that decision could be to literally release your heart. You may not even understand how much your heart is gripped by this need and this desire to spend. And, I would ask you questions. And are you motivated to make more money just so you can spend more money? What is motivating your heart to spend more time away from family, to work all that overtime, to get that second job, to climb that corporate ladder? And it's okay to do all those things if the motivation is correct. And so, Sarah, that's what you've spent your time. You've spent time creating this challenge, not just to replicate the reason you did it for, but for whatever reason a person might feel compelled to go on a spending challenge. So what do you really hope people will gain as they go through this challenge? What do you really hope that they will experience in their own life, in their family?
So good. That's so good. I should admit I am a spender. I love to spend money. Sometimes money literally burns a hole in my pocket, I think, in my head. But it is, the spending challenge, I hope that people get out of it some sense of awareness of why they're spending money and a shifting of the heart into who they are and how they were created, and that there's a God that loves them and that they don't need to get and achieve and do in order to be who they are. So there's a lot of intangible roots beneath it. On the surface, I hope that people get a jump start on their next financial goal, like whatever that is. Whether it's an emergency fund or whether it's, they're saving for a convertible. I hope that whatever their next financial goal is, it's a jump start toward that. But I really hope that people pay attention to the discomfort of it and gain more self-awareness about what's really going on with their spending, because that's where the life change comes in, and so good.
As you created this challenge, I'm sure you were imagining all the different people who might be a part of the challenge and how their life might not mirror your life. You live in Canada, you're thinking of Americans, people in the UK, Australia, anybody who understands the English language. It could be South Africa. We have people who are fully funded life members from those places. You're thinking of the 50-year-old male who is single. You're thinking of the person who is a young mom. You're thinking of the couple who's just starting out in their journey. Maybe it's a person who's a college student and saying, hey, I see that I've identified this greed thing real early in my life. How was that as you were thinking about all those different scenarios? Did you see some universal application that says, hey, I don't care. This is human, period. If you are a human, yes, this will apply to you. And how did you kind of arrive at those?
Yes. Well, I was actually looking at how we ended up here, spending money so freely and so easily. And the way we spend money has changed dramatically. Like in less than a lifetime, the way we shop on Amazon and things can arrive in our doorstep, sometimes within 24 hours because we click a button. And, we've got these devices that we can hold up to a scanner and pay with our phone. We don't even need the little plastic cards anymore. Like the way we spend money is so different, but the roots under why we're spending it are ageless. Like they are from the beginning of time. It's a human issue. The way that we spend. So it's been really interesting to look at, the cultural changes that have led us to this. But the thing that hasn't changed is the roots of our heart and our humanity. And to me, that's fascinating.
I love that. In fact, at the outset of this, as we kind of wrap this up, and I'm so excited to offer this 30-day spending challenge to everybody in the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not family. And the fully funded life members who are going to participate, I can't wait what's going to happen to them with all the other knowledge we've kind of wrapped around them. But you said something at the outset that you're hoping to reboot habits that leads to the ability to reboot your heart. And so as you are thinking about this spending challenge and this rebooting of the heart, surely there's a next step after 30 days. I understand this may go into print form. Is that true? Tell us a little bit about that.
That is true. Yes, I am in the process of writing a 365-day spending challenge. So it will be longer, but I'm really fleshing out what it looks like and what the opportunities are for people. Like, how do I make this so that somebody else can take this and do it in their own life? Somebody that's very different than me. The principles still apply. So, I want to help you make your own fast from spending. And I want to help you discover the roots under your spending because they're going to be different than mine. But yes, I'm writing a long form book about this, but this 30-day spending challenge is to invite people into it right away and sort of get you thinking and feeling like, what does that look like in my own life?
That's incredible. And I'm sure that's sponsored by Visa or MasterCard. They're sponsoring this.
Yeah, they love it.
So yeah, that's really exciting. And so, Haggai 1:6 is a great verse. It's a prophecy from one of the minor prophets. Haggai is one of the books of the Old Testament. And he says this prophecy to the people of Israel at that time. And he said, you have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. And you earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it. And I love that passage of scripture because we've all heard, I've got holes in my pocket. My purse has holes in it. And I would just ask every person who's participating in this podcast episode through listening, watching it on YouTube, do you feel like there's at least one hole in the wallet, in the purse, in the pocket? And the prophet was sharing this with those people at that time. It's not a prophecy for all time, but he's sharing with those people at that time that the reason this was happening was because they had chosen to live a life that was self-centered and not focused on others and not generous. And I see this same thing happening in our lives. In fact, it goes on to say, this prophecy from the Lord said that what you've earned, I blew away, declares the Lord, because of my house, which remains a ruin, while you yourselves live in your own paneled houses. And it said, while you're living your great life, you're not focused on anyone else. So I'm just going to blow it all away. And really the reason we wanted it to collaborate with Sarah is it is so compelling. It is so challenging, but I think there's another word that's going to describe it, and that is rewarding. And so we hope every one of you who's listening will check out this challenge, the 30-day spending challenge. And I hope you'll make sure you tune in next week, because next Monday, Whitney is going to be on this podcast, and she's going to be sharing about what? Tell everybody, Whitney, what you're going to be sharing about.
So as Sarah was creating this and just kind of getting to help the project come to our listeners, I felt convicted that I needed to participate in it. So I am currently 33 days into a 60-day challenge. So I kind of doubled it.
Wow.
So I figured I wanted to try that out. So I'm going to share a little bit about what I've experienced so far, 33 days in.
And we're going to interview your husband and your two children as well to see what they learned.
They're actually not here, but it, like you said, it is I'll share a little bit about the conversations that we've had. And it's been a great opportunity to kind of teach some of those things already to my girls. So I'm seeing the fruit of it in my own heart, but then also getting to share it, especially with my daughter who's almost 7.
That's awesome. Hey, if you like today's episode, please help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do this by quickly rating the podcast, leaving a review. Those rating and reviews help other people discover the podcast and make it better for the listeners. And if you've implemented one of our tips, please, please, please share your success with us. You can do it on any of those social media channels or by emailing it to info at iwasbrokenowimnot.com. You can shorten that to the 6 letters of those words, iwbnin.com. That's info at iwbnin.com. Hey, as we wrap it up, Sarah, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. Any last thing or encouragement you would share with people?
It is worth the challenge. It is worth the try because it can lead to life change. And that's not hyperbole.
I love it. Thanks so much again for joining us today. We're fired up. Have a great Monday, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.